picture like the aging heavyweight boxer stepping back into the ring. You know the exact energy I'm talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely. The classic one last ride.
Exactly. Or think of that iconic 90s basketball roster just, lacing up their shoes one last time after decades in retirement.
Yeah, and you've got all that overwhelming nostalgia, the incredibly flashy press conferences.
All right, and the sheer disbelief from the hardcore fans. It's this whole spectacle fueled by this rebellious against all odds spirit and just undeniable public loyalty.
It's a fierce, almost irrational desire for one last shot at the championship. We've seen that narrative play out in sports a million times.
A million times. But take that exact underdog comeback kid sports narrative, right? Completely rip it out of the athletic arena and drop it squarely into the middle of the most chaotic, glittering, high-stakes music competition on the planet.
Oh, it's the perfect setup. The odds are always mathematically stacked against the veterans.
Yeah.
Because the game itself has fundamentally evolved. The competitors are a generation younger, they're faster, and the returning heroes are basically running on muscle memory and sheer willpower.
And we watch it completely captivated, but half of us are peeking through our fingers.
Yeah,
Right?
totally terrified they're going to permanently tarnish their legacy.
Exactly. Well, welcome to another deep dive. Today's date is April 16th, 2026. So circle that on your calendar because we are exactly 26 days away from the Eurovision Song Contest in Vienna.
Less than a month away.
Less than a month. And hidden inside the massive stack of sources, the statistics, the betting odds, all the historical data we're looking at today, there is an absolutely unbelievable comeback story.
We are, of course, talking about the return of Vanilla Ninja.
Yes. The Estonian all-female pop rock band.
They are officially heading back to the Eurovision stage. And for anyone who has been tracking the shifting tides of European pop music over the last 2 decades, this is a monumental collision of past and present.
It really is. I mean, they formed back in 2002, so whether you have a spreadsheet tracking every single national selection this year or, you're just fascinated by how a pop culture brand survives the meat grinder of the music industry.
It is a miracle in itself, honestly.
Right. This is going to be a fascinating ride for you. Our mission today is to break down their absolute bloodbath of a victory at the Estonian national selection.
Eesti Laul.
Eesti Laul, yeah. And we're going to unpack their wildly controversial history in the 2000s music industry. I'm talking international chart rigging, geopolitical loopholes.
Oh, the drama is soap opera level.
It's insane.
Right.
And then we'll look at the brutal mathematical reality of the betting odds they face going into Vienna next month.
Because this isn't just about, 3 minutes of choreography and pyrotechnics. You should really care about this because Vanilla Ninja's return is a real-time stress test of audience loyalty versus expert curation.
Yeah, that friction is so interesting.
It completely exposes the mechanical friction between how professional juries analyze a piece of music and how the voting public emotionally reacts to a piece of history.
So let's jump right into that friction. If you were watching the Eesti Laul final on Valentine's Day, February 14th at the Unibet Arena in Tallinn, you saw that exact divide play out in spectacular fashion.
It was incredible to watch. We had a 12-act final.
Right, 12 acts. And the math from that first round of voting tells such a crazy story. Looking at the sources, the power was split right down the middle, 50-50 between the professional jury and the televote.
Right, the classic Eurovision split. And in that first round, Vanilla Ninja only pulled a combined 19 points, which landed them in 3rd place.
Just 3rd place. And if you dig into the distribution of those 19 points, the divide is staggering.
It really is. Because the professional jury, which remember is stacked with international producers, vocal coaches, industry executives, they handed Vanilla Ninja a measly 7 points.
7.
Yeah, just 7 points. They basically relegated them to the middle of the pack.
But the televote. The Estonian public slammed the maximum 12 points onto the board for them.
The maximum. The experts are essentially shrugging while the public is screaming at the top of their lungs to send them to Vienna.
It's wild. So you had Ollie sitting at the top with 22 total points for his track sleeve. And he was heavily favored by the jury, right?
Very heavily favored. And Noep was right behind him with 20 points for his song Days Like This.
Okay, so you have your top 3 locked in for the superfinal. Ollie, Noep, and Vanilla Ninja. And this is where the mechanics of Eesti Laul just completely flip the script.
Yeah, the rules shift entirely.
The jury is removed from the equation completely. The superfinal is a 100% public vote.
Right, fundamentally changes the psychological battlefield. I mean, think about it. When you have a 50-50 split, you're trying to thread the needle.
Right, you're pleasing two totally different crowds.
Exactly. You're appealing to technical critics who are mapping your chord progressions and vocal runs while also trying to give the audience a hook they can remember. But when you move into a 100% televote superfinal,
It's all emotion.
technical perfection takes a backseat to raw emotional resonance. Every time.
And Vanilla Ninja capitalized on that completely. I was looking at the final vote tally from the sources, and it is a masterclass in how a three-way vote can cannibalize the frontrunners.
Oh, the math here is fascinating.
It is. So there were 46,893 total votes cast in that superfinal. Ollie and Noep, the two acts the jury preferred, effectively neutralized each other.
They completely split the contemporary pop vote straight down the middle.
Literally down the middle. Ollie took 15,148 votes. Noep took 15,161.
A gap of literally 13 votes between the two jury darlings.
13 votes.
Yeah. They both captured exactly 32.3% of the public.
And while they were busy tying each other up, Vanilla Ninja just surged right past them. They pulled in 16,584 votes.
Which is 35.4% of the vote. They won the whole thing.
They dominated. Now, I know the superfinal format is always a massive point of debate in the fandom, but I have to push back a little here.
Sure. What's your take?
Doesn't a 100% public vote for the superfinal just turn it into a pure popularity contest? I mean, it feels like it entirely ignores the musical expertise. If the goal is to send the most competitive, objectively well-crafted song to Europe, throwing out the professional scores just seems like a massive risk.
It is a risk, definitely. But it's a calculated one, based on the fundamental reality of how Eurovision actually works.
How so?
Well, think about what a professional jury actually measures. They are assessing a song in a vacuum. They're looking at the dynamic range of the vocalist, the complexity of the instrumentation, the commercial viability of the production.
Oh, it's the technical specs of the song.
Exactly. They aren't supposed to factor in the artist's legacy. But the public at home, they're voting purely on feeling. They vote for the artist they grew up with, the artist who makes them feel a specific kind of national pride or nostalgia.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And in a contest where public emotional connection, the massive European televote, is literally half the battle on the final night, you simply cannot send an act that your own country isn't rabidly passionate about.
So basically, the jury looked at Vanilla Ninja's performance and graded it a 7. But the Estonian public looked at that exact same stage and saw their returning hometown heroes.
Precisely. The superfinal format acknowledges that technical proficiency cannot artificially manufacture passion. And if the Estonian public was willing to completely override their own industry experts by that massive a margin, we really have to look at the song itself.
The anatomy of the anthem.
Right. We need to look at the architectural DNA of the track to understand what triggered that massive wave of nostalgia.
Okay, so the track is called Too Epic to Be True. And since the public loved it enough to override the jury's top picks, let's talk about the mastermind behind it.
Yes, Sven Lõhmus.
Sven Lõhmus. I was reading up on him in the sources, and honestly, I compare him to, the Max Martin of Estonia.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. His Eurovision pedigree is massive.
He's a hit-making architect. He knows exactly how to craft a 2-minute and 59-second earworm.
He genuinely does. He has penned so many previous Estonian entries. He did Verona in 2017.
Oh, I remember Verona.
Classic, right?
Yeah.
He also wrote Rockefeller Street in 2011, which was huge. The incredibly atmospheric Rändajad back in 2009, and Let's Get Loud in 2005.
So he just knows the formula inside and out. He knows exactly what works on that specific stage.
He understands the highly specific, high-pressure environment of Eurovision. And he actually wrote Vanilla Ninja's very first breakthrough hit, Club Kung Fu, back in 2003.
Which we will definitely get to, because that is a whole story in itself. But let's dive into the lyrics of Too Epic to Be True for a second. On the surface, it's this reckless, unexpected love song, right?
Right, it plays with those classic pop rock tropes.
Yeah, I have the lyrics right here. It says, "Maybe I am so reckless I don't play by the rules." But if you look at the subtext, it's so heavily leaning into their own nostalgia. There's another line, "My life was uncontrolled, pure rebel rock and roll."
That isn't just a generic lyric. That is a hyper-specific callback to the exact aesthetic Vanilla Ninja cultivated 20 years ago.
It's totally validating the audience's memories of them.
Exactly. It's brilliant branding. They are basically singing directly to their fan base. Lõhmus kept the lyrics simple and heavily repetitive because he knows that in a pan-European contest, where English is often a second or third language for the voters, complexity is your enemy.
You just need a hook that transcends the language barrier.
You need something they can chant in a stadium.
And looking at the data on the global reach and fan reaction, that strategy of relying on simple anthemic nostalgia is already spilling way past the Baltic borders.
The translation data is wild.
It's unbelievable. The sources point out that fans have already translated the lyrics for Too Epic to Be True into dozens of languages. We're talking Belarusian, Chinese, Croatian, Dutch, French, German, Greek, Hebrew.
I think Polish and Spanish were in there too.
Yes, Spanish, Ukrainian, and Latin.
Latin.
Yes. Someone sat down and translated a 2026 pop rock comeback anthem into Latin.
That level of granular engagement tells you everything you need to know about the depth of this fandom. I mean, when a subculture is actively localizing your content into dead languages, you aren't just a band anymore. You are a cultural fixture.
Completely. And there was this one specific YouTube comment brought up in the sources that I think just proves their international reach perfectly. It was on a video of their winning Eesti Laul performance, and a user just wrote, 12 point from Poland, epic.
That is exactly what we're talking about.
It's a tiny piece of data, but it's so telling. That Polish fan isn't discovering Vanilla Ninja for the first time in 2026.
No, they're remembering them from the 2000s.
Right. So to truly understand why that Polish commenter and the Estonian public are so deeply invested, we have to fire up the 20-year time machine.
We have to go back to 2002.
Yes, because we need to explore this band's chaotic cross-border history. It is wild.
The history of this band is basically a crash course in the Wild West of the early 2000s European music industry.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So they formed in Tallinn in 2002. The original four-piece, all-female lineup was Marja Kivi, Lena Kurma, Katrin Siska, and Piret Jervis.
Got it.
And they had this very distinct, edgy pop rock sound. Almost immediately after forming, they throw themselves into the 2003 Eurolaul.
Which was the precursor to Eesti Laul, right?
Exactly. And their experience there is a perfect, almost eerie mirror of what just happened to them in 2026.
Oh, with Club Kung Fu.
Yes. They entered with Club Kung Fu. They got up on stage, performed it, and the Estonian televoters went absolutely wild. They crushed the phone polls.
Winning the televote completely.
But back in 2003, Estonia was using a completely different selection mechanism. It was a 100% jury system.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't just local industry folks. They brought in an international jury to decide their fate.
Right, and the sources mentioned that jury included people like Michael Ball, the British musical theater star.
Right, and this international jury looked at Vanilla Ninja with all their massive public support, and they just absolutely tanked them.
They tied for dead last. It's crazy. The public's overwhelming favorite was mathematically eliminated by a panel of experts looking for, I guess, a different type of polish.
The exact same jury versus public friction we just saw.
Yeah.
Only back then, there was no super final to save them.
Wow, but that didn't stop them, did it? Their rise was just meteoric after that.
Oh, it was the ignition switch for their entire career. The massive domestic exposure from the Eurolaul broadcast turned Club Kung Fu into an inescapable hit in Estonia.
And they didn't just stay a band, they became a massive brand. The sources talk about their Central European domination.
Yes, specifically in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The DAC region.
Well, they exploded there. They had hits like Tough Enough and When the Indians Cry, and they had a heavy rotation on the VV channel, which was like the MTV of Germany at the time.
They were everywhere.
They really were. They had video game features, like they were in Dance Dance Revolution, and locally in Estonia, they even had an ice cream and a curd snack named after them.
A curd snack. You know you've made it when you have your own signature pressed sweetened curd cheese coated in chocolate.
Seriously, the apex of fame. But okay, this brings us to the 2005 Swiss Eurovision twist. And when I read this in the sources, I was in sheer disbelief. You have to walk me through this because it sounds made up.
It is the most uniquely Eurovision story ever. So it's 2004. Switzerland is suffering through a horrific dry spell at the contest.
Like 0 points dry spell, right?
Literally. Their 2004 entrant crashed out with 0 points. It was a national embarrassment. So the Swiss broadcasting authorities are desperate. They look at the massive chart success Vanilla Ninja is enjoying across their country, and they decide to just hire them.
Wait, they just hired an Estonian band to represent Switzerland?
Yes. They invoked an internal selection process and essentially drafted a completely foreign band to carry the Swiss flag.
That is just incredible. You're popular here. Go to Eurovision for us.
Pretty much. They sent them to Kiev in 2005 with the song Cool Vibes.
But that had to cause massive controversy.
Oh, it triggered a massive geopolitical headache. The Estonians were furious because their biggest domestic stars were being poached. And a huge portion of the Swiss public was outraged because there wasn't a single Swiss citizen on the stage.
I mean, you can't blame them. How did they even get away with that?
The broadcasters used a technicality. The song Cool Vibes was co-written by their producer and manager, David Brandis. And Brandis was born in Switzerland and went to school there.
That is the thinnest loophole ever.
It was. But the passport controversy ended up being the least of their problems, because the drama that followed was just next level.
Right. The sources break down this soap opera-level drama. First of all, Amarja Kivi, one of the original members, leaves the group because she's pregnant.
Right before the biggest performance of their lives.
So management scrambles, and they bring in a replacement. A girl named Trinu Kivilan.
Who was only 15 years old at the time.
Yes. She initially lied about her age, presenting herself as a 17-year-old to bypass Eurovision's strict 16-year-old age rule.
Which is a catastrophic problem. The European Broadcasting Union is very strict about child performers. They were staring down the barrel of an automatic disqualification.
But they managed to squeeze her through another loophole, didn't they?
They did. They successfully argued that because her birthday was in January and the contest was in May, she would turn 16 just in time.
Okay, so they survived the passport outrage, they survived the age scandal, and then we get to the David Brandis chart rigging scandal.
Oh, the 2005 chart rigging scheme. This was a massive earthquake in the music industry.
Please explain the mechanics of this, because it sounds so wild.
So their manager and producer, David Brandis, got caught buying bulk singles to manipulate the German charts.
Like he was physically sending people into stores.
Yes, he figured out exactly which record shops were the panel stores that fed data directly to the chart compilers, and he hired people to physically walk in and bulk buy CD maxi singles of his artists.
That is so brazen. And he wasn't just doing this for Vanilla Ninja, right?
No, he was also doing it for Gracia, another artist he managed, who was ironically representing Germany at that exact same Eurovision contest.
You cannot rate this stuff. It's too crazy.
When it was uncovered, they completely banned his artists from the official German charts. Their credibility took a massive hit right before the contest.
So you have this illegitimate Swiss entry, a pregnant former lead singer, a replacement who barely meets the age requirement, and a manager banned for fraud. It sounds like a complete disaster.
And yet,
despite all that drama, they go to Kiev and they actually place 8th for Switzerland.
which was a massive triumph for the Swiss.
But there is an ultimate irony in that 2005 result that the sources highlight.
Yes, the voting sequence. Estonia gave its maximum 12 points to Switzerland that year,
That is so funny to me.
simply because their hometown heroes were singing for another flag. The Estonian public saw their homegrown rock stars up there and proudly awarded them top marks.
It's amazing. But after that, they went through a lot of turbulence, split from their manager, took a long hiatus, and now they've survived all that 2000s music industry chaos, and they are back.
Which brings us to the 2026 battlefield.
Right. Let's look at their actual chances in Vienna, because they are facing a highly modernized, highly competitive Eurovision landscape now.
The setup for Vienna is intense. Vanilla Ninja will perform in semifinal 1, which takes place on May 12, 2026.
And they are in the 9th slot.
Yes, 9th slot. And for context, the current members performing are Lena Kurma, Pirit Jervis, and Curly Kivilan, who is actually Trinu's younger sister. She joined in 2022.
Okay, so that's the squad. But the sources here, they lay out the brutal reality from the bookmakers. And it does not look good.
The mathematical odds are incredibly grim. The bookmakers only give Vanilla Ninja a 38% chance to qualify for the final.
A 38% chance to even make it to the Saturday night show.
Yeah, out of 15 countries in their semifinal, they are ranked 14th to win the heat,
Second to last.
with an implied probability of less than a 1% chance to actually win it.
Less than 1%, that is.
It's a complete mathematical write-off.
But when you break down the massive competition in that semifinal, I guess you can see why. The heavyweights are huge this year.
Let's talk about the competition. Finland is the heavy favorite.
Right. Finland is sending Linda Lampenius and Pete Parkkonen with the song Liikenheiten, and the bookmakers love them.
They are heavily favored to win the semifinal at 45%, and they have a 31% chance to win the entire contest. They are the final boss.
But it's not just Finland. France is in there with Monroe. Denmark is sending Søren Torpegaard Lund. It's a stacked heap.
And if you look at the jury versus televote predictions from the bookies,
Right. What are they saying?
they predict Australia, with Delta Goodrem, will win the jury vote, and they expect Israel, with Noam Betten, to win the televote.
Okay, but I have to push back here again. Are we trusting the bookmakers too much here? I mean, didn't the juries underestimate Vanilla Ninja at Eesti Laul too?
That is a very fair point. Bookmakers build their models on historical trends, expert consensus, contemporary streaming numbers.
Right, but how do you mathematically model 20 years of fond memory?
Exactly. You can't. And that leads to some very interesting speculation.
Let's hear it.
Think about the geographic layout of the voting. They are performing in Vienna, Austria. Austria is the host country, which means they are definitely voting.
And Austria is one of those DACH countries where they were massive.
Right. And Switzerland is also voting. The country they literally represented and carried to the top 10 in 2005.
Oh, wow. The nostalgia vote from those two nations alone could be huge.
Exactly. These are voting nations that have massive nostalgia for Vanilla Ninja. And remember, the semifinals are now a 100% televote environment.
Just like the super final in Estonia.
Precisely. So their rebel rock and roll vibe could definitely act as a dark horse in a purely televote-driven semifinal.
That makes so much sense. I mean, the viewers in Austria and Switzerland aren't going to be analyzing their vocal runs. They're just going to pick up their phones because they remember buying their CDs in 2004.
It's totally possible the bookies might be severely underestimating their enduring brand loyalty.
So as this deep dive broadens out, we really need to contextualize Vanilla Ninja's strange journey within the larger historical madness of the Eurovision Song Contest itself.
Yes, because their chaotic, dramatic trajectory fits perfectly into the beautiful absurdity of this show.
It really does. I was looking through the sources for some history of this chaos, and Vanilla Ninja's drama is just par for the course. Like, did you know about the 1969 four-way tie?
Oh, the four-way tie, a classic.
The voting system completely broke down and nobody had written a tiebreaker rule, so they just awkwardly handed the trophy to 4 different countries.
It caused absolute outrage. Several countries boycotted the next year because of it.
Or go way back to 1957, the Danish kiss scandal.
Right, Berth Wilk and Gustav Winkler.
Yes. At the end of their song, they kissed for 11 uninterrupted seconds on live television, and it generated absolute fury and pearl-clutching across the continent.
The contest has always operated on the bleeding edge of public acceptability.
Totally. And then there's the Bucks Fizz Velcro skirt stunt in 1981. They ripped off their skirts mid-routine to reveal shorter ones, and it was so impactful that Velcro literally sold out across the entire UK within 48 hours.
Which just shows the incredible cultural footprint of the contest. But beyond the music and the gimmicks, Eurovision constantly intersects with global politics and culture.
It really is a live stress test of international relations.
The 2014 victory of Conchita Wurst for Austria is a perfect example of that.
Right. The sources mention how her win became a massive geopolitical flashpoint. You had a prominent Russian politician going on record using her win to rail against European integration, literally calling her a bearded girl.
And the sources also highlight Conchita's powerful response to that backlash. She pointed out the absurdity of the panic, basically saying that if an entire nation is terrified that a young gay man with a beard and a dress can somehow bring their whole society to the brink of collapse, it could only be taken as a massive compliment to her power.
It's a fascinating look at how a performance stops being just a song and becomes a proxy battle over human rights and identity.
Exactly. And the contest is just as defined by its silences, too, like the 2020 pandemic cancellation.
Right. The first time it was canceled in over 60 years.
So, as a listener, why should you care about all of this? Because Eurovision isn't just sequins and wind machines. It is a mirror reflecting European history, shifting alliances, and cultural evolution over 6 decades.
A geopolitical chessboard played with keytars? I love that.
It really is.
So let's recap this incredible journey. We have Vanilla Ninja, a veteran pop rock trio from Estonia. They defied their own national industry experts, riding this massive wave of public nostalgia to win their national selection.
Returning to the stage after 2 decades.
Right, and now they are staring down these brutal betting odds, armed with nothing but nostalgia and this epic self-aware anthem.
It's the ultimate underdog story.
It really is. And I think the final listener connection here is just a reminder that sometimes undeniable public connection and sheer persistence can overcome industry gatekeeping and mathematical odds. The experts might score you a 7, the bookies might give you a 38% chance, but if fans are still translating your lyrics into Latin 20 years later, you are never truly out of the fight.
Which leaves you, the listener, with something really provocative to ponder as we wrap up.
Oh, lay it on me.
So Eurovision has strict rules, right? Like capping performers at 6 people on stage.
Yeah.
But when a band from Estonia can be hired to represent Switzerland and then sing a song in English that gets translated into Chinese and praised by fans in Poland, does the concept of a national entry even mean anything in modern music?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
Right. Or has Eurovision quietly evolved into a borderless global battle of pure pop branding? It's definitely something to think about as you tune into Vienna next month.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Keep an eye on Vienna, keep an eye on those voting screens, and we will see you next time.